There are moments in life when everything you believe to be real shatters in a single second, when the ground beneath your feet opens up and swallows everything you thought you knew about the people you loved. For Callista Moreau, that moment came wrapped in Tiffany blue paper, tied with a white satin ribbon, and signed with a lie. It was supposed to be a celebration. Her 32nd birthday in the heart of Manhattan, surrounded by the two people she trusted most in the world. Damien Rochefort, the man she'd spent 6 years building a life with, and Safira Dominguez, her best friend since college. The penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park was filled with champagne bubbles and laughter. The city lights glittered like diamonds below them, and Callista felt, for the first time in months, genuinely happy. But happiness, she would soon learn, can be the cruelest illusion. When Safira handed her that perfectly wrapped box, a Cartier bracelet that cost more than most people's rent, Callista's heart swelled with gratitude. When Damien kissed her forehead and whispered that she deserved the world, she believed him. And when she later found the credit card statement hidden in Damien's jacket pocket, showing a $10,000 charge to Cartier dated 3 days before her birthday, she thought it was just another surprise he'd planned. She had no idea that $10,000 would be the exact price of the truth, and that truth would destroy everything. Callista Moreau had built her life with the precision of an architect. Every choice, every relationship, every step forward was carefully considered and deliberately placed. At 32, she was a senior art curator at the Whitmore Gallery in Soho, a position she'd fought tooth and nail to earn. Her apartment in Chelsea, small but elegant, was filled with carefully selected pieces from emerging artists. Her wardrobe was minimalist but impeccable. Her life, from the outside, looked like the Instagram version of success. But it was Damien who made it all feel real. Damien Rochefort was the kind of man who turned heads when he walked into a room. 6'2", with dark hair that always looked artfully disheveled and grey eyes that could convince you of anything. He worked in private equity, the kind of job that required expensive suits and even more expensive watches. They'd met at a gallery opening 6 years ago. He'd been there with clients. She'd been presenting a new exhibition on contemporary Portuguese artists. He'd approached her during the reception, asked intelligent questions about the work, and by the end of the night had asked for her number. Their relationship had unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Dinners at Balthazar, weekend trips to the Hamptons, quiet Sunday mornings reading the Times in bed. He was attentive without being suffocating, successful without being arrogant, and he treated her like she was the center of his universe. Or so she thought. Safira Dominguez had been in Callista's life even longer. They'd met during their first week at NYU, two scholarship kids navigating a world of privilege they'd only seen in movies. Safira was everything Callista wasn't. Loud, bold, unapologetically ambitious. She'd become a fashion publicist, the kind of person who knew everyone and could get into any party in the city. Where Callista was reserved and thoughtful, Safira was spontaneous and magnetic. They'd been through everything together. Breakups, career crises, family drama. When Callista's father died during their junior year, Safira had been the one who held her through the funeral. When Safira lost her first major client and thought her career was over, Callista had been the one who talked her off the ledge. They were sisters in every way that mattered. The birthday celebration had been Safira's idea. "You work too hard," she'd said over coffee at their usual spot in the West Village. "Let me throw you something special." "Damien's been traveling so much lately. You deserve a night where you're the center of attention." Callista had protested, but not too hard. The truth was, Damien had been traveling a lot. London, then Dubai, then Tokyo. His company was expanding internationally, and he was one of the key partners managing new acquisitions. The trips were getting longer, the calls home getting shorter. She understood. She'd been buried in work herself, preparing for a major retrospective that would define her career. But she missed him, missed the easy intimacy they used to share. So when he'd returned 2 days before her birthday, she'd been genuinely excited. And when Sapphira had suggested the penthouse party, a friend of hers was out of town and had offered up her place overlooking Central Park, it had felt like the perfect way to reconnect. The night of the party, Callista had dressed carefully, a simple black silk dress that Damien loved, her hair in loose waves, minimal makeup. When she arrived at the penthouse, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it belonged in a design museum, Sapphira and Damien were already there, setting up champagne flutes and arranging flowers. "There she is!" Sapphira had rushed over, pulling her into a hug. She smelled like Chanel and looked stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than Callista's rent. "Happy birthday, mi amor." Damien had been more subdued, but his smile was warm as he kissed her. "Happy birthday, beautiful. Come see the view." He'd led her to the windows, and for a moment Callista had simply stood there, looking out at the city. Central Park stretched out below them, a dark rectangle of trees bordered by the glittering lights of the Upper East Side and Upper West Side. In the distance, she could see the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, the whole iconic skyline that still made her heart race even after a decade in New York. "It's perfect," she'd whispered. "You're perfect," Damien had replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. The evening had unfolded like a dream. They'd drunk expensive champagne, eaten catered food from that new French place in Tribeca, laughed at old college stories that Sapphira insisted on retelling. At one point, Sapphira had connected her phone to the speakers and played the songs they used to dance to in their dorm room, and the three of them had spun around the living room like idiots, laughing until their sides hurt. It was during a quiet moment, when Damien had stepped out to take a work call, that Sapphira had handed her the gift. "I wanted to give this to you privately," Sapphira had said, her dark eyes serious. "You mean the world to me, Callie. I don't say it enough, but you're the best friend I've ever had. I wanted to give you something that shows you how much you matter." The Tiffany blue box was small, but heavy. When Callista opened it, her breath caught. Inside was a Cartier love bracelet, 18-karat rose gold, iconic and timeless. She'd admired these bracelets for years, but would never buy one for herself. They were too expensive, too indulgent. "Sapphira, I can't accept this," she'd said, even as her fingers traced the smooth gold. "This is too much." "Nothing is too much for you," Sapphira had insisted, fastening it around Callista's wrist. "You deserve beautiful things, Callie. You deserve to be celebrated." Callista had hugged her friend tightly, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just wear it and think of me." When Damien had returned from his call, he'd noticed the bracelet immediately. "That's gorgeous. Sapphira, you have excellent taste." "I learned from the best," Sapphira had said, raising her champagne glass, "to Callista, to the most talented, beautiful, loyal woman in New York." They'd clinked glasses, and Callista had felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was her life. These were her people. Everything was exactly as it should be. 3 days later, she found the receipt. She hadn't been snooping. That was what she would tell herself later, over and over, as if it mattered. She'd been doing laundry, emptying the pockets of Damien's suits before taking them to the dry cleaner. It was a routine she'd done 100 times, but this time, folded in the inside pocket of his navy Tom Ford jacket, was a small piece of paper. A credit card statement, recent charges. Her eyes had scanned it absently at first. Business lunch at Le Bernardin, gas, parking, and then, halfway down the list, her heart stopped. Cartier, New York, NY, 10 to 347 Dangers. dated 3 days before her birthday. For a long moment, Callista simply stared at the paper. Her brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe he'd bought her something too. Maybe this was a different bracelet. Maybe... But she knew. Deep in her gut, where instinct lives, she knew. She looked down at her wrist, at the rose gold band that Saphira had given her. The bracelet that supposedly came from her best friend's generous heart. And suddenly, everything tilted sideways. Why would Damien's credit card show a charge to Cartier 3 days before her birthday? Why would it be for over $10,000, the exact price range of a love bracelet? Why would Saphira give her an expensive gift at the exact same time that Damien's statement showed he'd bought something similar? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more terrible than the last. And underneath all of them was a darker thought, a suspicion so awful she couldn't quite let herself think it directly. She sat down on the bed, still holding the statement, the gold bracelet suddenly feeling heavy as chains on her wrist. Something was very, very wrong. Callista didn't confront Damien immediately. That was her first mistake. Or maybe it was her greatest act of self-preservation. Because once you ask certain questions, once you open certain doors, there's no going back to the comfortable ignorance of before. Instead, she watched. She became a detective in her own life, studying the man she loved like he was a stranger. And the more she looked, the more the cracks appeared, the business trips. She'd never questioned them before. Damien worked in private equity. Of course he traveled. But now, lying in bed while he scrolled through his phone with a faint smile on his face, she wondered, was he really in meetings? Or was he somewhere else entirely? The late-night calls. He'd step onto the balcony of their Chelsea apartment, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. "It's work," he'd say when he came back in. "Tokyo office. Time zones are a nightmare." But Tokyo was 13 hours ahead. When he took those calls at 10 p.m., it would be 11 a.m. there, business hours. So why did he need to go outside? Why the hushed tone? And Saphira. God, Saphira. Callista started noticing things she'd overlooked before. The way Saphira would check her phone constantly when the three of them were together, her fingers flying across the screen before quickly tucking it away. The way she'd suggest plans that always included Damien. "Let's all grab dinner. We should do a weekend trip together." Never just the two of them anymore, like it used to be, and there were the small things, the knowing looks between them that Callista had always interpreted as friendship, the inside jokes she wasn't quite part of. The time last month when she'd called Saphira to grab lunch and Saphira had said she was swamped with work, only for Callista to see a photo on Instagram later that day. Saphira at a new wine bar in the meatpacking district, tagged at 2 p.m. Alone. Or so it appeared. The paranoia grew like a living thing inside her chest. At work, she'd stare at her computer screen, unseeing, while images played in her mind like a horror film. Damien and Saphira, her boyfriend and her best friend. The two people she trusted most in the world. Together. It couldn't be true. It was too cruel, too cliché, too much like a bad movie. But the credit card statement sat in her purse like a live grenade, and the bracelet sat on her wrist like evidence. 2 weeks after finding the receipt, Callista made a decision. She would find proof. Real, undeniable proof. Because right now, all she had was suspicions and a credit card charge, and she couldn't destroy her entire life over a coincidence. She started with Damien's laptop. He kept it in his home office, a small second bedroom they'd converted into a workspace. He was usually careful about logging out, but occasionally, maybe one time in 10, he'd leave it open. Callista had never looked before, never had a reason to. But now, she waited. It took 3 days. 3 days of casual glances, of walking past the office with laundry or coffee, checking the screen. And then, On a Tuesday afternoon when Damien was at the gym, she saw it. His laptop open, email pulled up, cursor blinking on an unfinished message. Her hands shook as she sat down in his chair. She told herself she'd just checked the Cartier charge. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe he'd bought it for his mother, his sister, a client. There were dozens of innocent reasons. She just needed to find the invoice, the explanation, and then she could let this go. She opened his credit card account. He'd saved the password in Chrome, trusting and careless, and navigated to the statement. There it was. Cartier, $10,347. She clicked on the transaction details, and the page loaded with agonizing slowness. When it finally appeared, Callista felt the air leave her lungs. Item, Cartier Love Bracelet, 18K rose gold, size 16, small. Delivery address, 847 Washington Street, Apt 4C, New York, NY 114. That wasn't his address. It wasn't their address. With trembling fingers, Callista opened a new tab and typed the address into Google Maps. The street view loaded. A trendy building in the West Village, all glass and exposed brick, and the kind of modern luxury that cost a fortune. She clicked back to Damien's email, searching for anything related to that address. There were hundreds of emails, thousands. She searched Washington Street. Nothing. She searched Cartier. One result, an order confirmation sent to a different email address. Not his work email, not his personal email, but something new, drochefor2dgmail.com, a secret email address. Callista's vision blurred. She clicked on the confirmation email, already knowing what she'd find, but needing to see it anyway. Dear Mr. Rochefort, thank you for your purchase. Your Cartier Love Bracelet will be delivered to the address provided. Safira Dominguez, 847 Washington Street, Apt 4C, New York, NY 114. She read it 3 times, then 4. The words didn't change. Damien had bought the bracelet. Damien had paid $10,000 for it. Damien had had it delivered to Safira's apartment, an apartment Callista had never been to, never even known Safira had, since her friend had always claimed to live with roommates in a walk-up in Hell's Kitchen. And then Safira had gift-wrapped it in Tiffany paper and given it to Callista, looking her in the eye, calling her mi amor, telling her she deserved beautiful things. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Callista stood up from the desk so fast the chair rolled backward and hit the wall. She paced the small office, her mind racing. This was real. This was happening. Her boyfriend was sleeping with her best friend, and they'd used her own birthday to flaunt it, to mock her, to play some sick game where she was the fool. How long? How long had this been happening? She went back to the laptop, clicked through Damien's emails with shaking hands. She searched Safira's name. Dozens of emails appeared. She opened the first one, dated 8 months ago. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. When can I see you again? The reply, tomorrow. Tell Callie you have a meeting in Boston. I'll tell her I have a work event. Same hotel. Callista's stomach lurched. She ran to the bathroom and vomited, tears streaming down her face. 8 months. They'd been doing this for 8 months. She went back to the office, wiped her mouth, and kept reading. The emails were a catalogue of betrayal. Stolen afternoons in hotel rooms. Weekends when Damien claimed to be traveling for work and Safira claimed to be visiting her family in Miami, only they were together in Cabo, in Montreal, in Charleston. There were photos. Safira in a bikini on a beach Callista didn't recognize. Damien's arm around her waist, both of them smiling like people who'd gotten away with something, and there were messages about Callista, about her. She has no idea. Sometimes I almost feel bad. Don't. She's so wrapped up in her work, she barely notices anything. It's perfect. Did you see her face when I gave her the bracelet? God, she actually cried. I thought I was going to lose it. You're evil. I love it. Callista read these messages sitting on the floor of Damien's office, her back against the wall, tears running silently down her face. She didn't make a sound. She couldn't. The pain was too big, too consuming. It filled up every part of her until there was no room for anything else. Not breath, not sound, not thought. They had made her the joke, the pathetic girlfriend who worked too much, who noticed too little, who was so trusting she'd accepted a bracelet her boyfriend bought for her best friend and believed it was a gift from the heart. She didn't know how long she sat there. Long enough for the light outside to change, for shadows to stretch across the floor. Long enough for her tears to dry into salt tracks on her cheeks. When she finally stood up, something inside her had changed. The heartbreak was still there. It would be there for a long time. But underneath it, burning bright and fierce, was something else. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. They thought she was weak, oblivious, too wrapped up in her little curator job to notice she was being played. They thought they could use her, humiliate her, make her cry over a bracelet that symbolized her own betrayal, and she'd never find out. They were wrong. Callista Moreau was many things, careful, reserved, methodical, but she was not weak, and she would be damned if she let them get away with this. She closed the laptop carefully, erased the browser history, and put everything back exactly as it was. When Damien came home from the gym 30 minutes later, sweaty and cheerful, she was in the kitchen making dinner. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "What are we having?" She smiled at him, and it didn't even feel fake. Because she wasn't smiling at him anymore, she was smiling at what was coming. "Pasta," she said, "your favorite." Planning her revenge became the only thing that kept Callista sane. Every morning she woke up next to Damien and felt her stomach turn. Every time Saphira texted her with some cheerful message, "Coffee this week, miss you," she wanted to scream. But she didn't. She smiled. She responded. She played the part of the oblivious girlfriend, and trusting best friend so well, she almost convinced herself. But at night, alone in the gallery after everyone else had gone home, she planned. The first decision was the easiest. She was done. With Damien, with Saphira, with this entire life they'd built on lies. There would be no confrontation, no tearful confession, no chance for them to gaslight her or make excuses. She would simply disappear from their lives as cleanly and completely as possible. But not before they understood exactly what they'd lost. Callista had spent 10 years in the New York art world, and if there was one thing she'd learned, it was that reputation was everything. Damien worked in private equity, where trust and discretion were currency. Saphira worked in fashion PR, where image was literally her job. They'd built their careers on being polished, professional, connected. She would take that from them. Not immediately. That would be too obvious, too emotional. No, she would be strategic, methodical. She would wait for the perfect moment, and then she would strike with surgical precision. The opportunity came 3 weeks later. Damien's company was hosting their annual gala, a black-tie event at the Plaza Hotel where they courted investors and celebrated successful acquisitions. It was the kind of night where deals worth millions were made over champagne and passed hors d'oeuvres, where reputations were built or destroyed in whispered conversations by the bar. Damien had invited her months ago, and she'd already bought a dress, midnight blue silk, that made her look like she belonged in a Sargent painting. She'd been planning to go, to play the supportive girlfriend, to network with the collectors and philanthropists who always attended these events. Now she had a different plan. 2 days before the gala, Callista made a call to Mikhail Petrov, a Russian oligarch and art collector she'd worked with the previous year. He'd bought 3 pieces from the gallery, contemporary works by emerging artists, and had mentioned casually that he was looking to diversify his investments. Perhaps into private equity," he'd said, "if you know anyone reputable." She'd passed his information to Damien at the time, thinking she was being helpful. Now, she was cashing in that favor. "Mikhail," she said when he answered, "it's Callista Moreau from the Whitmore Gallery." "Ah, Callista, what a pleasure. How can I help you?" "Actually, I'm calling because I need to tell you something. About Damien Rochefort." There was a pause. "Your boyfriend, yes?" "Not for much longer," she said, her voice steady. "And before you invest a single dollar in his company, you need to know what kind of man he really is." She told him everything, not the emotional parts. Mikhail didn't care about her broken heart, but the professional concerns, Damien's secret relationship with a woman who had access to client information through her PR connections, the potential for conflicts of interest. The questions about his judgment, his discretion, his trustworthiness. "He's using a secret email account to coordinate with her," Callista said. "I have access to it. I can show you the communications. The times he claimed to be in business meetings but was actually with her. The way they've discussed using social connections to benefit both their careers. The complete lack of professional boundaries." She didn't mention that the woman was her best friend. That detail would make her look vengeful. This way, she was just a concerned former partner looking out for a potential investor. Mikhail was quiet for a long moment. "This is disappointing to hear. I thought you should know, before the gala, before any contracts are signed." "I appreciate your honesty, Callista. Very much." She made similar calls to 3 other potential investors she'd connected Damien with over the years. By the time she was done, she knew word would spread. In the rarefied world of New York private equity, reputation was everything, and rumors, even unconfirmed ones, could be devastating. But that was just the beginning. For Safira, Callista's plan was more personal. Safira's career depended on her relationships with designers, editors, and influencers. She'd built her client list by being connected, by knowing everyone, by being the person who could get anyone into any show or event. Her Instagram was carefully curated, 28,000 followers who saw her as an insider, a tastemaker, someone worth following. Callista created a fake Instagram account, not one that pretended to be someone else. That would be too obvious. Just an anonymous account, carefully designed to look like a disgruntled former friend of Safira's. She posted screenshots, not of the emails between Damien and Safira. That would be illegal, possibly even criminal, but of other things. Safira's own messages, the ones she'd sent Callista over the years, the times she'd talked trash about her clients, called designers talentless hacks, mocked influencers she was supposed to be helping. "This is what Safira Dominguez really thinks of you," the account posted. "She smiles to your face and laughs behind your back. Ask her about what she said about a designer name at Fashion Week. Ask her about how she really got a brand name their placement." The posts included just enough detail to be credible: dates, locations, specific events, nothing that could be definitively proven, but nothing that could be easily dismissed either. Within 48 hours, the account had 3,000 followers. Safira's comments were flooded with angry messages. 3 clients publicly dropped her. Callista watched it all unfold from her laptop at the gallery, feeling nothing, or maybe feeling too much to identify any single emotion. She'd expected satisfaction, maybe even joy. Instead, she just felt empty, hollow. The night of the gala, Callista dressed in her midnight blue silk and called an Uber to the plaza. She wasn't going as Damien's girlfriend. She hadn't told him she was coming at all. She'd simply used the invitation he'd left on the kitchen counter, the one with her name printed in elegant script. When she walked into the ballroom, the party was already in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over hundreds of people in tuxedos and gowns. A string quartet played near the windows overlooking Central Park. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes. She spotted Damien immediately. He was near the bar, surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. He looked good. He always looked good, in his custom tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. He was smiling, laughing at something one of the men said, completely at ease. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. Callista walked up to him slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. When she was close enough to touch him, she said his name. Damien. He turned, and for a split second, she saw genuine surprise in his eyes, then confusion, then the smooth mask of his professional charm sliding back into place. Callista. I didn't know you were coming. I thought you had a work thing. I did, she said, but I finished early. I wanted to surprise you. She watched his face, looking for guilt, for fear, for any sign that he knew she'd discovered the truth. But there was nothing. Just his easy smile, his hand reaching out to take hers. Well, I'm glad you're here. Let me introduce you to... Actually, she interrupted, I need to talk to you privately. Something flickered in his eyes. Is everything okay? No, she said simply. Everything is not okay. She led him away from the crowd, out onto one of the terraces that overlooked Fifth Avenue. The October air was cold, and she could see her breath, but she didn't care. She wanted space, wanted distance between them and all those people who still thought Damien Rochefort was someone worth knowing. What's going on? He asked once they were alone. You're scaring me. Callista reached into her clutch and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a USB drive, one containing copies of every email between him and Sapphira, every hotel reservation, every receipt, every piece of evidence of their 8-month affair. I know, she said, holding it out to him, about you and Sapphira, about all of it. She watched the color drain from his face, watched him open his mouth, close it, struggle for words that wouldn't come. Callista, I can explain. No, she said. You really can't. There is no explanation that makes this okay. There is no excuse that makes you anything other than what you are. A liar and a cheat who was stupid enough to use his own credit card and email to conduct an affair. How long have you known? 3 weeks, since I found the Cartier receipt. $10,000 for a bracelet you bought for your mistress and had her give to me as a gift. That was a nice touch, by the way. Really drove home how little you both respect me. He looked sick. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to keep fucking my best friend until you got bored? She'd never spoken to him like this before. She'd never spoken to anyone like this before. But something inside her had broken open, and all the carefully controlled rage was pouring out. I'm sorry, he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. God, Callista, I'm so sorry. It happened. We didn't plan it. And then it kept happening, and I didn't know how to stop it without losing you both. You've lost us both now, she said, because I'm done. With you, with this relationship, with pretending I don't know who you really are. Please, he said, reaching for her. Please, can we talk about this? Can we try to work through this? I love you, Callista. I know I fucked up, but I love you. She stepped back, out of his reach. You don't love me. You love having me as your cover story. Your respectable girlfriend who makes you look like a good man, but you're not a good man, Damien, and everyone's about to find out. What does that mean? She smiled, and it was cold. It means I told Mikhail Petrov about your affair, and Simon Chen, and the Bartlett Group, all the investors you were counting on tonight. They're not going to invest. Not when they know you're using company time to conduct a secret relationship, using secret email accounts, showing a complete lack of judgment and discretion. His face went white. You didn't. I did. Your reputation in this industry, it's over. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the rumors will spread, people will talk, and in a world where trust is everything, you'll be the man who can't be trusted. You're destroying my career, he whispered. No, she said. I'm just telling the truth. You destroyed your own career when you decided your dick was more important than your integrity. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. What about Saphira? Did you do something to her too? Callista pulled her arm free. Saphira is learning a similar lesson about consequences. But don't worry, I'm sure you two can comfort each other. You'll have plenty of time now that neither of you has a career to focus on. She walked away from him, back into the ballroom, leaving him standing alone on the terrace in the cold. Inside, she could already see the whispers starting, see people glancing toward the terrace, sensing drama. She didn't stay. There was nothing left for her here. As she walked through the lobby of the plaza and out onto Fifth Avenue, Callista felt the weight of the last 3 weeks finally lift. She'd done it. She'd made them pay. Not with violence, not with screaming scenes, but with the one thing that actually mattered in their world. Consequences. But as she stood on the sidewalk, watching taxis stream past, she realized something. The revenge felt hollow. It didn't make her feel better. It didn't undo what they'd done. It didn't heal the wound. She was still alone, still betrayed, still broken. The difference was, now she knew she could survive it. The days after the gala passed in a blur. Callista moved through them like a ghost, performing the basic functions of life, eating, showering, going to work, without really feeling present in any of it. She'd told Damien it was over, had watched him try to argue, to plead, to bargain, and had remained unmoved. She'd packed his things herself, placed them in neat boxes by the door, and changed the locks while he was at work. When he'd come home to find his key didn't work anymore, he'd called her 17 times. She'd answered once. "It's over, Damien. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "We can fix this." "No, we can't. Pick up your things by Friday or I'm donating them." She'd hung up before he could respond. Saphira had been both easier and harder. Easier because Callista simply blocked her number, her email, her social media. No explanation, no confrontation, just a clean severance. Harder because Saphira had shown up at the gallery 3 days after the gala, tearful and desperate. "Please, Callie, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," Callista had said, not looking up from the catalogue she was reviewing. "I know everything. I've known for weeks. Now I'd like you to leave." "It wasn't supposed to happen." "I don't care what it was supposed to be. I care what it was, a betrayal, by both of you, for 8 months. Now leave, or I'll call security." Saphira had left, sobbing, and Callista had gone back to work as if nothing had happened. But that night, alone in her apartment, she'd cried until she couldn't breathe. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the rewriting of history. Every memory she had with either of them was now tainted, suspect. That weekend trip to the Catskills 2 months ago, had they been texting each other the whole time? That dinner party where Saphira had insisted on inviting Damien, had they touched under the table when she wasn't looking? Every laugh, every inside joke, every moment of what she'd thought was love or friendship was now evidence of her own stupidity. But slowly, painfully, Callista began to rebuild. It started small. She rearranged her apartment, moved furniture, bought new sheets and towels that Damien had never touched. She created space that was entirely hers, untainted by his presence. She took down the photos of them together, replaced them with prints from the gallery. She reclaimed her home. At work, she threw herself into the retrospective with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. The exhibition would showcase 30 years of contemporary art from the Portuguese diaspora, artists working in Lisbon, London, Paris, New York. It was ambitious, controversial, and exactly what she needed. A project so consuming it left no room for heartbreak. Her colleagues noticed the change. Marcus, the gallery director, pulled her aside one afternoon. "You okay, Moreau? You've been here until midnight 3 days this week." "I'm fine, just focused." He studied her with kind eyes. Marcus was 62, had been in the art world for 4 decades, and had seen everything. "Break up?" She looked at him, surprised. "How did you—" "I've known you for 5 years. You're always professional, always composed. But the last 2 weeks, you've been running on rage and coffee. It's a specific energy." He paused. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Fair enough. But Callista, whatever happened, whoever didn't appreciate you, they're an idiot. Don't let them take your light." The unexpected kindness almost broke her. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and Marcus squeezed her shoulder before walking away. That night, instead of working late again, Callista went home at a normal hour. She opened a bottle of wine, one she'd been saving for a special occasion that would never come, and sat on her couch and let herself cry. Not because she missed Damien. She didn't. The man she'd loved had never really existed. He'd been a performance, a carefully crafted illusion, and now that she knew the truth, she couldn't mourn someone who'd never been real. But she mourned what she'd lost, the belief that she was loved, the trust she'd placed in people, the version of herself who'd believed the world was fundamentally safe, that Callista was gone and she wasn't coming back. The new Callista would be harder, smarter, more guarded. She would never again ignore her instincts or excuse suspicious behavior. She would never again make herself small to accommodate someone else's betrayal. But the new Callista would also be free. The retrospective opening was scheduled for mid-December. As the date approached, Callista felt herself coming back to life. The exhibition was stunning. 32 artists, over 60 pieces, spanning painting, sculpture, photography, and installation work. She'd spent months coordinating loans from museums and private collections, negotiating with artists, designing the layout. It was the best work she'd ever done. The night of the opening, the gallery was packed. Collectors, critics, artists, society figures, everyone who mattered in the New York art world had come. Callista wore a black velvet dress that made her look like she owned the room, because she did. This was her night, her triumph, her proof that she was more than the fool who'd been cheated on. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, discussing the work, introducing artists to collectors, making connections that would sustain the gallery for years. She was brilliant, magnetic, completely in her element. At one point she overheard 2 women near the bar. Heard her boyfriend cheated on her with her best friend. Can you imagine? God, how humiliating. I'd die. Well, clearly she's doing fine. Look at this exhibition. It's incredible. Callista kept walking, a small smile on her face. Let them talk. Let them gossip. She'd given them something better to discuss. Her work. Near the end of the night, Marcus found her again. "Congratulations, Moreau. This is exceptional. We're getting calls for loans, purchase inquiries, everything. You've done something really special here." "Thank you," she said, and meant it. "You know," he continued, "we're opening a second location, Los Angeles, next fall. I'm going to need someone to run it, someone with vision, someone who understands both the commercial and artistic sides of this business." He looked at her meaningfully. Interested. Callista blinked. Los Angeles, a new gallery, a new city, a fresh start. 3 months ago she would have said no. She would have considered Damien, their relationship, whether he'd want to move. Now she said, "Yes." "Absolutely yes." Marcus grinned. "Good. Let's talk details next week." As the last guests filtered out and the caterers cleaned up, Callista stood alone in the gallery, looking at the walls of art she'd assembled. She thought about the women who'd created these pieces, Immigrants, exiles, women who'd left their homes and rebuilt their lives in foreign cities, women who'd turned their displacement into power, their loss into creation. She understood them now in a way she hadn't before. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. I know you'll never forgive me, but I'm sorry." Sapphira, still trying to reach her, months later. Callista deleted the message without responding. She pulled out her phone and opened Instagram for the first time in weeks. She scrolled through her feed, past the carefully curated images of other people's perfect lives, until she found her own profile. The last post was from before, a photo of her and Damien at a gallery opening, both of them smiling. The Callista in that photo looked happy. She also looked naive. Callista deleted the photo. Then she deleted every photo that included Damien or Sapphira. She watched her grid transform, watched the evidence of that life disappear. Then she posted a new photo, the retrospective exhibition space, empty and elegant in the morning light before the opening, with a caption she'd thought about for a long time. "Home is not where you're from. Home is where you're going." New exhibition opening tonight at the Whitmore Gallery. 3 years of work, 32 incredible artists, one story, the art of becoming. She didn't mention the breakup, didn't mention the betrayal. Just acknowledged, subtly, that she was in the process of becoming someone new. The post went up, and within minutes, comments flooded in. "Congratulations, beautiful work, can't wait to see it." But Callista had already closed the app. She didn't need external validation anymore. She'd found something more valuable, self-respect. If you're rooting for her like I am, show it by liking this video. And if you want to see more mini-series like this, subscribe to the channel because there's much more coming your way. That night, in her Damien-free apartment, Callista poured herself a glass of wine and opened her laptop. Marcus had sent over the preliminary details for the LA gallery, location, budget, timeline. She read through them carefully, making notes, already envisioning the space. Los Angeles, city of reinvention, where people went to become new versions of themselves. It felt appropriate. She thought about Damien, wondered briefly if the rumors had destroyed his career like she'd hoped. Then she realized she didn't actually care. He'd become irrelevant, a footnote in her story. The same with Sapphira. They'd thought they were the main characters, the ones making choices and pulling strings, but they'd only ever been obstacles, challenges she'd had to overcome to get to this moment. The real story had always been hers alone. She closed the laptop and looked around her apartment. It was small, too expensive, filled with art she'd collected over years of careful saving. It was entirely, perfectly hers, and soon she'd leave it behind for something new. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like freedom. Callista Moreau raised her glass to the empty room, to the woman she used to be and the woman she was becoming. "To new beginnings," she said softly, "and to never looking back." 6 months later, Callista stood in the empty space that would become the West Coast branch of the Whitmore Gallery, watching Los Angeles light pour through floor-to-ceiling windows. The building was in the Arts District, all exposed concrete and industrial chic, surrounded by street art and independent coffee shops, and the kind of creative energy that made New York feel stodgy by comparison. She'd arrived in LA 3 weeks ago with 2 suitcases and a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. No partner, no baggage, no one's expectations but her own. It was terrifying, it was exhilarating, it was exactly what she needed. The move had been faster than she'd expected. After the retrospective's massive success, Marcus had accelerated the timeline for the LA gallery. By February, she was negotiating leases and hiring contractors. By March, she was packing up her Chelsea apartment, saying goodbye to New York, and boarding a one-way flight to LAX. She'd worried, briefly, that she was running away. that leaving New York meant letting Damien and Sapphira win, but then she'd realized they hadn't driven her away. They'd freed her. Before them, before the betrayal, she'd been comfortable, complacent, building a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt increasingly hollow. Now, she was building something real. The LA gallery would be smaller than the New York location, but more focused. She was planning to showcase emerging artists, particularly women from immigrant communities, artists whose work explored themes of displacement, identity, and resilience, artists who, like her, understood what it meant to rebuild yourself from the ground up. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Marcus. "Tell me something good," she answered. "The Castellano collection said yes. They're loaning us 3 pieces for the opening exhibition." Callista's heart leaped. The Castellano collection was one of the most prestigious private collections on the West Coast. Getting access to their work would put the new gallery on the map immediately. "Marcus, that's incredible. How did you convince them?" "I didn't. You did. Sent them the retrospective catalogue and your pitch for the LA gallery. They called this morning, said, and I quote, 'Anyone with Moreau's eye deserves our support.'" She felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away. "Thank you for believing in me, for this opportunity. You earned it, Callista. Stop thanking me and start changing the art world." After they hung up, she stood in the empty gallery for a long moment, letting the weight of it all settle over her. She'd done this. Not Damien, not Sapphira, not anyone else. Just her vision, her work. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an LA number she didn't recognize. "Hey, this is Zara from the coffee shop downstairs. We're doing a soft opening tonight if you want to check it out. First coffee's on the house for new neighbors." Callista smiled. This was the thing about LA that had surprised her most. How friendly people were, how willing to connect. New York had trained her to be guarded, to keep people at arm's length, but here there was an openness she'd forgotten was possible. She texted back, "I'll be there. Thank you." That evening, she walked down to the coffee shop, a bright, airy space with hanging plants and local art on the walls. Zara turned out to be a woman about her age, with short purple hair and a sleeve of tattoos. "You're the curator, right?" Zara said, handing her an oat milk latte with perfect foam art. "The whole building's been talking about the gallery opening. It's exciting." "No pressure," Callista joked. "Are you kidding? We need more good art spaces in this neighborhood. Most of the galleries are in West Hollywood or Beverly Hills, catering to celebrities and billionaires. It'll be nice to have something for actual artists and locals." They talked for 20 minutes, about the neighborhood, about LA, about the differences between coasts. Zara introduced her to other people from the building, a graphic designer, a documentary filmmaker, a woman who made jewelry from recycled ocean plastic. By the time Callista left, she had 3 new Instagram follows and an invitation to a rooftop dinner party the following week. Walking back to her temporary apartment, a furnished studio in Silver Lake until she found something permanent, Callista felt something she hadn't felt in months. Lightness, like the weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. She thought about Damien and Sapphira, wondered briefly what they were doing. Then she realized with a start that she hadn't thought about them in days, maybe even a week. They'd been so central to her thoughts for so long, first as beloved parts of her life, then as sources of pain, then as targets of revenge. But now they were just gone, irrelevant. She'd won, but not in the way she'd planned. The revenge had felt good for about 48 hours. Watching Damien's reputation crumble, seeing Sapphira lose clients, it had been satisfying in a shallow, temporary way. But this life she was building, this freedom, this sense of possibility, this was the real victory. The weeks passed in a blur of work. Callista hired a small team, an assistant curator, a gallery manager, a marketing coordinator. She met with artists, reviewed portfolios, made selections for the opening exhibition. She worked 12-hour days and loved every minute of it. She also, slowly, started rebuilding her personal life. She went to yoga classes in Griffith Park at sunrise. She explored new neighborhoods, tried new restaurants, drove up the coast to Malibu, and watched the sunset over the Pacific. She said yes to invitations, let herself be open to new friendships, allowed herself to trust again, carefully, gradually, but genuinely. One Saturday, she drove to Venice Beach and walked along the boardwalk, watching skaters and street performers and tourists taking photos of the famous Venice sign. She stopped at a vintage clothing store and bought a leather jacket she'd never wear in New York. She ate fish tacos from a stand and got sand in her shoes and didn't care. She felt, for the first time since the betrayal, like herself again. Or maybe like a new version of herself, someone stronger, wiser, less naive, but no less capable of joy. Her phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Callista, it's Damien. Her stomach tightened, but only for a second. Then she felt nothing, just mild curiosity about why he was calling. How did you get this number? I called the gallery, told them I was a collector interested in the LA opening. They gave me your office number, and I figured out your cell from that. That's borderline stalking. I know, I'm sorry. I needed to talk to you, to apologize. For real this time. She was standing near the ocean, watching waves crash against the shore. Okay, apologize. What I did was unforgivable, I know that. I hurt you in ways I can't even fully comprehend. And I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was selfish and cruel, and I took you for granted. You deserved so much better. Yes, she said simply, I did. I heard about the LA gallery. Congratulations. I always knew you'd do something amazing. Don't do that, she said, her voice sharp. Don't act like you supported me or believed in me. You cheated on me with my best friend for 8 months. You made me the joke. You don't get to claim any pride in my success. You're right. I'm sorry. They were both quiet for a moment. In the background, she could hear traffic, horns honking. He was still in New York. Why are you really calling, Damien? Because I miss you. Because I fucked up the best thing that ever happened to me, and I want a chance to make it right. Callista laughed. A short, bitter sound. You think we can make it right? After everything, I think we could try. People make mistakes, Callista. People deserve second chances. You're right, she said. People do deserve second chances, but you don't deserve one from me. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice you made over and over for 8 months. A choice to lie, to betray, to humiliate me. That's not something you get to come back from. So that's it. We're just done. We've been done for months, Damien. I'm just the one who accepted it. And Saphira, I don't want to hear about Saphira. I don't want to hear about you. I want you to stop calling, stop trying to contact me, and let me move on with my life. Can you do that? Silence, then quietly. If that's what you really want. It is. For what it's worth, I am sorry. And I hope you find happiness, Callista. You deserve it. She hung up without responding. For a moment, she stood there, phone in hand, watching the ocean. She thought about the woman she'd been when she first discovered the betrayal, broken, rage-filled, obsessed with revenge. She barely recognized that version of herself. This Callista, the one standing on Venice Beach in a vintage leather jacket, building a gallery in a new city, starting over at 33, was stronger. Not because she'd destroyed them, but because she'd survived them, because she'd chosen herself. She took the Cartier bracelet off her wrist. She'd kept wearing it, though she wasn't sure why, and held it up to the light. The rose gold gleamed. It was beautiful, expensive, meaningless. She walked down to the water's edge and threw it as far as she could. It disappeared into the waves without a sound. $10,000 gone. The truth it represented released. She turned and walked back toward her car, leaving the bracelet and everything it symbolized behind her. The night of the gallery opening, Callista wore a white silk suit and red lipstick and felt like a woman who'd walked through fire and come out forged in steel. The gallery was packed. Artists, collectors, critics, the entire LA art scene, and then some. The exhibition she'd curated, titled Displacement Belonging, featured 17 artists exploring themes of home, identity, and transformation. It was personal. It was powerful. It was exactly what she'd needed to create. She moved through the crowd, confident and gracious, introducing people and discussing the work. She felt none of the anxiety that had plagued her in New York, none of the need to prove herself or perform a version of success. She was simply present, authentic, alive. Near the end of the night, Marcus flew in from New York and pulled her aside. "Moreau, this is extraordinary. We've had 12 purchase inquiries, 3 museums asking about loans for future exhibitions, and the LA Times wants to do a feature. You've done it." She smiled. "We've done it. This was always a team effort. Don't deflect. This is your vision, your work, your triumph. Own it." So she did. For the first time in her life, she let herself fully claim her success, without qualification or modesty. She'd earned this, she'd built this, and she was proud. Later, alone in the gallery after everyone had left, Callista walked through the space, looking at each piece of art. The stories of displacement and resilience, of women who'd left home and found themselves, of transformation and reinvention. She understood now that her story wasn't about Damien or Sapphira. It wasn't even about the betrayal. It was about the woman she'd become in the aftermath, the one who'd chosen not to let their cruelty define her, who'd channeled her pain into purpose, who'd built something beautiful from the ruins. She'd started this journey thinking revenge would heal her. But healing had come from something else entirely, from choosing herself, from doing the work she loved, from building a life that didn't require anyone else's validation. The betrayal had been the catalyst. But the transformation, that was all her. Callista locked up the gallery and stepped out into the warm Los Angeles night. The city spread out before her, full of possibility and promise. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't need to. For the first time in her life, she was enough, all by herself, and that was everything. Callista Moreau's story is not unique. Every day, women discover betrayals that shake their foundations, that make them question everything they thought they knew about love, friendship, and trust. The pain is real. The humiliation is crushing. The desire for revenge is human. But here's what Callista learned, and what every woman facing similar betrayal must remember. Your worth was never determined by their loyalty. Your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to see it. Your future isn't limited by someone else's choices. The real power isn't in destroying those who hurt you. It's in refusing to let their actions destroy you. It's in choosing to build something beautiful from the ashes. It's in recognizing that the best revenge is becoming so happy, so successful, so completely yourself, that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to suffer. You don't need closure from people who never valued you in the first place. You just need to walk away, hold your head high, and build a life so magnificent they become a footnote in your story, a brief chapter of pain that led to your greatest transformation. That's not just revenge. That's liberation. And liberation always is the ultimate victory.